Right. Yeah. Welcome to the May 1st, 2023 Council meeting of the Township of Stone Mills. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. The first item on our agenda is a 3-minute delegation from Ted Darby regarding the future of the Cataraqui Trail. Ted, do you want to come up and pick a mic there? You just press the button in the middle, and if it comes up red, then you're on.
Great. Good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Reeve, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about the Cat Trail briefly. I have 3 minutes. So I'm obviously preaching to the choir when I talk about how important the Cat Trail is to this community and to our county and to our region. You're going to hear more in subsequent deputations about the assets, the specifics, features and benefits of the trail. As well, you're going to hear about significant issues, legitimate issues from the perspective of landowners regarding potential expansion of the trail. So all of which, when I read the deputations and read the agenda, caused me to do a deep dive to say, okay, what's going on? What's happening? And what I would like to just highlight is that we are in I think, a bit of a difficult situation with the Cat Trail. And that is because of recent changes with provincial legislation, the role of conservation authorities, where the Cat Trail, that is the lands that form the part of the Cat Trail, are owned by the Cataraqui Conservation Authority. We know from recent provincial legislation that the authorities are having their mandate changed, and they're more focused on flood prevention, and their ability to manage lands and deal with things like trails is potentially compromised. So that's a concern. We know that a potential expansion would be a great idea in my view, but we've got to deal with these legitimate land issues. The other thing that brings up in the context of what would be required to make that a reality is investment. And I think it's pretty obvious that to maintain the Cat Trail for generations to come, we're going to need substantial investment. The current management structure with Friends of the Cat Trail and ownership with the Conservation Authority, I think there's going to be some issues. What I'd like to put on the table for your consideration after you hear the other delegations is what this all brings to my mind is the need for a conversation, for a need for the multi-levels of government, the county, so our upper tier government, the county that is, and the townships that are directly impacted by the Cat Trail, as well as the conservation authorities, as well as Friends of the Cataraqui Trail. We need to find some mechanism to bring people together so that we can seek the appropriate investments and manage this trail for generations to come. We need a master plan. We need a vehicle to get that done. We need some conversations. So that's the message I'd like to leave you with. You have a written deputation in hand. I know Deputy Reeve Davison is on the Friends of the Cat Trail and has a lot more expertise to offer in this matter, but that's what I wanted to say tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. You did that in 3 minutes. It's very good. Any discussion in regards to what Ted has brought to the table? Can I get a motion to receive his deputation then? Sherry and Doug, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So with that, because these 3-minute delegations precede everything else, we do need an approval of the agenda. Wenda and Krista Lee, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Any conflicts of pecuniary interest to declare and the general nature thereof? None noted. We have some minutes to approve from the April 3rd, 2023 Council public meeting on the zoning bylaw amendments. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Wendy and Rob. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? It's carried. And the minutes of our regular council meeting from the same date. Doug and Sherry, any discussion from that minute, those minutes? None? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Further delegations. Our first delegation is from Pynchon Limited about that's our annual landfill report presentation. And I'm wondering if the spokespeople can, I'm sorry, I don't have your names. If you can just introduce yourselves when you come up to the microphone.
Absolutely.
This is the consulting firm that monitors our landfills and makes sure we're in compliance with all the environmental regulations and so on. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite to come tonight and present the findings from the 2022 reports and sampling years. It's been a couple of years since I've had the opportunity to come and meet with everyone face to face. I see there's a couple of familiar faces to me and a couple of new faces. So if at any point during the presentation you have questions, please feel free to stop me and I'll answer that. You want to go to the next slide? So introductions. I'm Tim McBride. I'm a senior hydrogeologist with Pynchon. I'm also the director of municipal and landfill services. So probably about 80 to 90% of my life is spent on landfills and, you know, landfill approvals and that sort of thing. We're not a consulting firm that, you know, one day I'm approving a highway or a bridge and the next day I'm doing a landfill. This is what I do. So with me today, I have Samantha Young. She's our project manager here locally on this job. She doesn't like to talk publicly, but very, very intelligent young lady. And I wouldn't want anyone else by my side for this. So I insisted she come with me to do this presentation today. Next one, please. So yeah, I'll just quickly go through what we're going to discuss tonight. There's the three facilities in the township here. We have Camden East, we have Moscow, and we have Sheffield. So you can see the bullet points are consistent between all three sites. We're going to talk about the current monitoring program. We'll talk about the 2022 results, do a little brief recommendations of what we think should happen for 2023 to make your lives easier. And we'll talk about remaining site capacity because that's a key topic for these assets. Yeah, go ahead. One more too, please. So yeah, so for the Camden East site, currently there's 11 monitoring wells there and 3 surface water stations, and that's all contained within the license. So we have to operate the facility in accordance with that license, and that's what's required to continue to be in compliance with the license. All the wells at this site are in really good condition. Superficial seals are great, so there's no surface water that's leaking in. And Sam's team tells me that everything operates really well with the wells. They're able to get water where there is water. And most importantly, we're in compliance with Reg 903. Yeah, this figure is not the best, but it kind of gives you an idea if we were to zoom in on it, you know, where the wells are and where the surface water monitoring stations are on the site. There's one surface water station that's actually in the old quarry operation, so I don't think we've got water there in 5 years. So that might be one that we can recommend that we discontinue or take off the table. And although it's not costing you anything right now in that Sam's team doesn't actually fill bottles and doesn't send it to the lab, etc., we do have to go check the location and confirm that there's no water in it. And we do have to carry an allowance for that in your asset retirement obligations. So it may be something that might be part of the program we want to amend moving forward. So yeah, anyways, that's just the layout of the site. So we can continue with the next slide, please. So yeah, as part of the 2022 programs, as well as the past 4 years, we haven't seen anything significant at the landfill site, either near field or far field. There's, you know, nothing to suggest that we have any methane gas concerns there at the site either. The volume of the site is such that we don't have to do any kind of methane collection or waste to energy type of things. Like the limit for that is if we were over 10,000 or a million cubic meters. So we're nowhere near that. There's no, specific trigger program established for this site. We follow a generic trigger program, which is referred to as Guideline B7. It's based on the background conditions at the site, as well as the Ontario Drinking Water Standard. So we actually set the trigger for health-related parameters at almost 25% of the drinking water standard and 50% for non-health related parameters. So it's very, very conservative. Yeah, and then we also have no issues with respect to provincial water quality. So those are the surficial or surface water parameter lists that we have to comply with for creeks and rivers. So those surface water stations that we do monitor on this site, there's no issues there in those two bodies. So yeah, we do have some trigger level exceedances at a couple of the monitoring stations. But like I said before, they're just for the health or for the non-health related parameters, sorry, like total hardness, iron, and manganese, and total dissolved solids. So most of these are operational or aesthetic parameters that are set for the ease of water treatment systems, like managing those types of units. They don't constitute a health related parameter. And some of them are not really great indicators for landfill performance. I'm sure many of you that are on, wells in rural settings, you probably have your own manganese and iron issues in your own wells. So just because we have hits there doesn't mean that they're landfill derived. And we've indicated that we do not believe that they're landfill derived at this site. So for the next year, I think what we want to do is keep everything status quo. We're just going to continue to sample groundwater and surface water consistent with the license, so spring and fall. One thing that we would like to recommend, and we've done it in the past, it's part of our program, is we're going to do an annual topographic survey, and the purpose of that is to figure out what the volume of the waste pile is, and we can compare that to previous surveys and get us an idea of how quickly we're advancing, how quickly we're filling up the landfill site, and that'll really help us get a better handle on the site life, and if there's any operational things that we want to look at to increase that life. For example, one thing we'll look at is do we need to apply additional compactive effort, and would the costs that go into that offset that, would it be beneficial to spend that kind of money for what kind of return? So so speaking of site life, the last survey we had out there was 2019. Yeah. And what we've done is we've looked at the survey prior to that, and we've back calculated, what was the 6-year average, rate of landfill deposition. And we figured that was about 2,500 cubic meters per year. And we have a remaining capacity currently of about 38,000. So, it's a very simple math. You take the 38,000 divided by your fill rate, and you end up with 15 years left at this facility. So, yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll just keep trucking unless anyone's got questions. All right, great. So, Moscow is our other facility. Again, there's 15 groundwater wells at this location. There used to be a monstrous surface water program here. I think it was 30 monitoring stations by the time we had the river and everything. So Samantha put a memo together with her team and submitted that to the ministry on your behalf, and with your approval, I think it was through last year or the year before, to really, reduce that. We weren't getting any value from that data. And as you can imagine, 27 samples, spring, summer, fall at $100 a sample was really a waste of money for data we weren't using. So Sam's team put something together for the ministry, justified why we wanted to get rid of those 27 stations. We've replaced that with 6 shallow monitoring wells directly around the landfill. There's 3 that are like right at the landfill toe, and then they all have sisters, we call them, stepped away from the landfill so that we can compare, C1 versus C2 and see how quickly the landfill effects are dissipating. I'm really excited. You can probably tell by my voice, I'm excited about how that's performing. We do see landfill effects, directly at the toe of the landfill. But by the time we get to the sisters, like everything is very, very, all the concentrations have decreased, significantly. One parameter we look at in particular is boron. And I can tell you, like around the landfill toe, the concentrations are about 1 milligram per liter. By the time you get out, step away from the landfill to the next set of wells, the concentrations are in the order of 0.05. So we're talking about 2 orders of magnitude lower. So I'm very, very happy with how things are naturally attenuating there. And, it was well worth the effort of Sam's team to go through that program reduction and have that approved by the ministry now. Because again, we get to take that all off the books for financial assurance or our asset retirement moving forward. So that's a win for us. All the wells in here are in good condition with the exception of one nest. The current landfill operation is kind of encroaching on that nest. So there's a risk there that well nest is going to be buried. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, but there's 2 issues with that. One, if it gets buried and we lose it, it provides a direct conduit. If the cap were to get knocked off and under buried conditions, it provides a direct conduit for leachate to the aquifer underneath. And on top of that, the capital required to install a new well is, significant. Those things aren't cheap to build.
So do we have guidance on what we need to do to protect that well?
Sam's working on that with her team. She's going to go out next week, I think it is. And they're going to go out and check the status of it. We did put a new cap on it last year, a new secured cap. But yeah, we probably are going to have to extend it if we can. If it can't be extended, the construction of this thing is pretty old. So that's why we need to look at it. If it's something that we can extend, and we've done that at other facilities, we just extend it so it doesn't get buried. But if not, it might be decommission it properly with grout and then relocate it or re-drill it. So. Yeah, so here's another figure we have here. So, Sam, we don't have the old surface water stations on there, correct?
They're in the blue, and then the new ones are in the red.
Okay, yeah, so thank you. So yeah, you can see in the top right corner there, we have the all the blue wells or surface water stations, sorry, are what was previously required by the ministry. So you can see there's a ton of samples there. And now that's all been replaced by the 6 little red dots. So like I said, it's a significant program reduction and it's really, it's showing us what we need to see. And like I said, I'm very happy with the performance of this facility, so.
Tim, how far would the outer ring of sampling sites be from the inner ring? Is it like 50 meters or something? It's
Do you know what the offset is?
roughly
It's 30 meters.
30 meters. Yeah, so about 100 feet. And in that distance, you're seeing considerable attenuation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty significant. That's
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Yeah. And that speaks, volumes too, to the hydrogeologic setting, whatever you want to call it. It actually makes this site a good candidate site for potential expansion and stuff like that too, if it's behaving that well. So, there probably would be some contingency measures we'd have to have in place, but it certainly, would indicate that the site is, the site conditions are favorable for landfill expansion, even if we wanted to in the future. So, all right, let's go to the next one. So yeah, as I indicated, there's a series of wells that are directly in the landfill waste deposits. It's 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and 10.5. Those ones we do see impacts in. We do see some impacts in the new wells around the toe as well. But like I said, once you step away from the site, everything seems to be working really well. And that's why we've come to the conclusion that it's continuing to operate as designed as a natural attenuation facility. So, This slide here, I just talk a little bit about some of the criteria that does fail. Again, we have alkalinity, hardness, TDS, iron, sodium, DOC, and manganese. So those are all, like I said, right in the waste deposits. So those are kind of your indicator parameters. You know that those are elevated. So that's what we look for in the far field sites, let's call them. And like I said before, we have really, really good natural attenuation, and everything comes in line by the time we get anywhere near the property line. So, and again, there's no evidence of landfill gas found on this site either. So for this site, it's pretty straightforward. Again, continue on with the spring and fall monitoring. Like I said, Sam's team did a really good job reducing the program. So I think the modifications that we've made are all we need to do for the next little while. Probably just collect some data now, develop a scientifically defensible database to base any decisions on moving forward. That one well needs some attention, and Sam will double back with Jeff and let him know what needs to be done there. And then again, this will be another site that we need to do a topographic survey on and figure out where we're at with respect to landfill capacity. And we'll probably do that in the fall once the leaves are off the trees, but before the snow comes in. Because my intention is to do it via drone survey. So really that takes 20 minutes. If we can get the guys here, I mean, they still charge you like it would be a full survey, but really it takes 20 minutes. So if we can get a 20-minute window where there's low winds, no snow on the ground, they get us the equivalent of 3,000 survey shots. So it gives us a lot of data, and we have a lot of confidence in the accuracy of the data we get at that point in time. So yeah, the Moscow site, there's about 60,000 cubes remaining. And based on the fill rate from survey to survey, it looks like there's only about 750 cubic meters a year that go into there. So again, if you do the simple math on this, you would say, oh, well, that would sound like we have about 75 years. But under the new asset retirement obligations regime, we can't treat all the landfills independently. So if we know that Camden East, for example, is going to close in 15 years. Well, the 2,000, what are we going to do with the 2,500 cubic meters that can't go there anymore? So at that point, it's going to have to be diverted to Moscow. So it starts to eat into the Moscow site life. So originally, in our original liability estimates, we assumed that Moscow had about 70 years left. But again, we can't treat them independently anymore. So now the life for Moscow has been reduced to about 30 years. And our last site, this has 16 groundwater wells and 4 surface water stations. Some of the groundwater wells are more like surface water stations. There's a lot of beaver activity on this site that I think we're going to have to take some action on. The wells are in good condition, aside from there's 4 wells there that we feel that the seals have been breached just because they've been underwater for a number of years now. So the water level in the wells is equal to the water level of the beaver pond, which, like I said, is I should have put pictures in the presentation. I apologize, but they're essentially underwater, or very close to underwater. So yeah, there's a couple wells that are submerged, and then there's 2 more wells that we were actually able to locate that have been lost for 4 or 5 years. So Sam and her team found those. So we're starting to sample those again. And then there's a number of dry point piezometers too that are partially submerged, and but they don't produce water, which is really bizarre. So that would indicate that the seals are still working. But again, they do present a risk if the beaver pond were to get even deeper and overcome the top of those casings. Again, it would be a conduit for beaver pond water to get into the aquifer. So we probably want to avoid that. So yeah, this little map kind of shows where the well network is with respect to the waste deposits. And you can see there's a couple of wells to the south that are right, almost along the property line. So those are ones that we give particular attention to, especially given the groundwater flow direction, which is like east southeast. So we want to preserve those and make sure they're in a good state. But really, there is a monstrous beaver pond. Do you want to do the hand wave, or you want?
Yeah, I can,
Okay, sure.
So, these are lots, so right here.
And
I
it-
have to cross it to get to a couple of the wells.
Yeah.
Actually, this one's right here. This one's-
Yeah, so that's pretty much all a lake, right, Sam, between those 4 wells at the bottom? Like these, I think with the beaver dam where it is, this is all inundated. This is almost all flooded now. And these wells are actually in the water, so the casings stand up about a meter, and the water's about half a meter up it already. So I think we just need to get a trapper in there and then maybe remove that beaver pond or something. So I know that sounds easy. It's not always easy, but anyways. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, please. So yeah, we haven't identified any significant landfill stuff in the groundwater or surface water at this site. Again, landfill gas is not an issue. We have a 3-tiered contingency plan on this site. So if we have the tiered system is put in place to, mitigate any like anomalous data that we might get. So what we do is if you were to get a bad sample result, we go back to that well during the next regularly scheduled event and sample it in duplicate just to confirm the results that we found. If you have that again, stage 2 would be, probably sample in duplicate again or maybe an increased frequency of sampling or something like that. And then tier 3 would only be implemented if we actually took action and said, okay, well, there's an issue here. We need to do active leachate collection, or we need to cap the landfill, or we need to do something. And we'd see, okay, well, how effective are those mitigative measures? That would be our tier 3 sampling. And if it showed that things were working well, we'd be able to revert all the way back to tier 1. So that's part of the program for this particular site. So it's nothing too fancy, but it's just a different step in the procedure. Okay. Yeah, so similar to the other sites, nothing really alarming here. We have alkalinity and we have total dissolved solids at a couple of the wells. We have hardness at all locations, including background. So that would make me think that hardness is elevated naturally. We have DOC and we have sodium and iron and manganese at a large number of the locations as well. So yeah, we don't believe that any of these are landfill derived. And even when we have parameters that fail everywhere, even at the background, we do look to make sure that we're not deteriorating the water quality even further. Just because it fails in background doesn't mean we have free reign and we can do whatever we want. So that's one of the things that Sam does look at as well is how, are things deteriorating even further. So like I said, at this site, we're not seeing that. So I'm happy with that. My biggest concern here, and it sounds kind of silly, is the beaver pond. So yeah, recommendations here. We need to create a path to wells 11 S and D. So that stands for shallow and deep. Really, they're on an island in the middle of the flooded area. And the last time we were there, there wasn't enough water in them to sample. So they are, they are separated from the beaver pond, and they would be indicative of, groundwater impacts. So I want to preserve those wells and I want to use them when we can. But I don't necessarily want to put Sam and her team in hip waders wading through a beaver pond and tripping over something they can't see to go get water samples, right? So either we put a path in there or maybe we'd have to look at it. I don't know. I don't even know. We never talked about whether a canoe or something would be a viable option, but we're going to have to do something there. Or alternatively, in bullet 2 would be remove the beaver dam in the flooded area, so that this area is not submerged. Which I think would be the, our best option, because really that is your natural attenuation zone for the landfill site. So if it's flooded, there's a potential there that there could be short circuiting of the groundwater to surface water, and it wouldn't be acting, wouldn't be performing the way it's supposed to. So yeah, spring and fall surface and groundwater sampling is what we need to continue with. And again, this is another site we need to do a survey, because all the waste deposition is above grade. So again, we can use the surveys to determine the difference from year to year. Yeah, your 6-year average waste deposition rate on this site is 1,400 cubic meters a year. Our remaining capacity is about 46,000. So yeah, you have about 20 years left at this facility. So, and then after, again, this is another site because it's only got 20 years left. After 20 years, anything that goes into this site would be diverted to Moscow. So further reducing the site life in Moscow. So that's all been factored into Moscow only having 30 years remaining.
So Tim, just for clarification, I think the total capacity is 46,000 and the remaining capacity is about 28,000. That's what I've got here. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. And do you factor in the closure of Camden East as affecting this one, or do you treat this one as though it's on its own and not affected by the other two?
Yeah, I put this one on its own. I assume that once Camden East is closed, it'll go to Moscow.
Right. Yeah.
So we conducted the 2022 closure and post-closure liability estimates in accordance with Public Sector Accounting Board, standard 3280, or the asset retirement obligation standards. So part of that is you have to figure out how much garbage is in the site today, what's the approved capacity, and then you factorize your expenditure based on how full the landfill is. And in addition to that, you have your projections of cost over the life of the landfill. And then the other side of that is you also have to do the post-closure side. So all of these sites, even once they're closed and they no longer receive waste, they have to be monitored for a minimum of 25 years. And that's really non-negotiable. However, you are sometimes able to reduce the programs once you're in a closure state. We have a number of facilities we work on. The ministry doesn't want to read these reports year after year after year, especially once they're closed. Nothing's really changing. Groundwater doesn't move that fast. So in a closed landfill site, often we're able to reduce the reporting frequency to every 3rd year. So there are ways to start to save some money once you get to the closure. But unfortunately, you'll be seeing me for 25 years. So
I won't.
No. So anyways, the fill rate and stuff we talked about already, the liability estimates. I know initially when I sent this to the township, some people fell off their chairs when they saw the change in liability. So there's a couple factors here. One is the changes in site life. Your remaining years really play a role in that. The other huge role in it is interest rates right now. So interest rates being what they're at is driving the prices up on everything. And then on top of that, the interest rates are actually published by the Ministry of the Environment. And they also provide us with the discount rate. So in every year of my career, the two numbers have almost matched. You have like 3% and then you have a discount rate of, whatever, 4%. This year it's actually flipped in that the interest rates published by the Ministry of the Environment are 3% and the discount rate is actually -1. So it's not a discount, it's interest again. So that really drives the numbers up, and I'm working, with municipal staff to try and rectify those numbers and come up with something that's more realistic. And there is opportunities to do that, but it's not straightforward and it's not easy. So Is that fair?
It affects my bottom line in your financial statements.
So yeah, Moscow is the one that has the biggest change. You can see last year's liability estimate was 125,000 roughly, and now it's up to 1.6 million. That is really due to the fact that we thought we had 73 years of life left, and now that we've had to compile everything with the closure of the other two sites, this site goes down to a site life of only 30 years. So you can't. You're not dealing with a closure that's 75 years away. Now you're dealing with a closure that's 30 years away. So, and then same sort of thing here for Sheffield. This one is almost entirely just interest rate driven, really. So. Yeah, here's a little summary chart. So yeah, last year's rate had us at about 2 million, and now we're at about 5 million. So I'm answering a lot of questions from municipal staff on those numbers, and like I said, I'm working with staff trying to sort that out, and I'm providing some mechanisms that I've seen other municipalities use to I don't want to call it a workaround because it's not. I think it's just a more realistic accounting of the liability. So we're working on that right now, and I'll continue to support you guys through that process. All right. And any questions?
Questions or comments for Tim and Samantha? Go ahead, Doug.
I'll just make a comment to you, Tim. It's a good report, excellent report, but I'll take you back to the history though. As much as you highlighted some issues with extra costs and that, actually it's excellent because not too many years ago, Sheffield had 5 years life left in it. Now it's got 15 and we've operated these years. So we've done something right in those years, okay? In the late 70s, we were visited by the ministry and they were going to shut Camden East down. Okay, it was at capacity. It's still operating. So we've done something right. With the help of people like yourself, we may have some issues in Sheffield, but I think we'll do well in the future. Moscow was a good example. Moscow was a nightmare 15 years ago with what was going on and the sampling that had to be done out in the swamp and everything else. We had an issue, and now we've got an excellent site there. So I think we'll do well with your support on this. Thank you.
Anyone else? I just have a question, I guess, for Jeff. Jeff, what about those beavers?
I believe that's on M&R property.
Oh.
So we would have to go through that. It's on Pleasant Lake.
Right.
Yeah, so we can consult with M&R and see if we can't get them removed.
So that's something that they're doing routinely. There's trappers they have on call, I suppose.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Something else, Doug?
Just those wells how did we drill them in the first place if they're on the other side of the pond? How did we get to them? Air tracks, were they, or
It was an air track machine, but it was dry,
dry then?
8 months of the year.
So
at
it
the
needs
time.
to be dry again. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything further? Can I get a motion to receive the report from Pension, Sherry and Rob? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks very much, Tim, Samantha.
Thank you.
Okay, item B under delegations is the concerned residents of Stone Mills regarding the battery energy storage system. And who's going to be speaking tonight? Michael Lettner. Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good. I'm fine, thanks. You know the routine with the microphone there.
Okay.
You've got 15 minutes, and
My wife is actually just grabbing me a quick bottle of water. I must excuse myself if I have a little tickle in my throat.
it's quite all right.
There we go. There. Yes. Thank you very much. Support staff.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Reeve Wise, Deputy Reeve, and distinguished council members for allowing us to come in tonight and discuss the BES project that's being proposed by our friends at Blue Earth. I must say, I don't believe, is there anybody here from Blue Earth this evening? There isn't, eh? We were kind of hoping that we might be able to have them listen to our concerns as well, but unfortunately, with their not being here, we will go on. So next slide. So we wanted to start out with doing a bit of an introduction and of who we are and where we're located. I must say that the lengths that are indicated on this are actually a little bit too long. I was corrected to be told that every house is within 400 meters or less of the proposed BES facility. And we are all residents immediately around the proposed site, and we are very much opposed to having this site installed in that location. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what's the big deal? So the challenge we're having with this is that, number one, it's utilizing lithium battery technology. Secondly, this is a for-profit proposal that's being installed within a residential rural area. The other aspect is that with the lithium batteries, it is a very volatile product. And with that, the technology associated with it and regulations is very, very immature. Given the infancy of it, regulations either don't exist or, excuse me, or they're being put into the responsibility of local municipalities that I don't believe are necessarily adequately resourced to manage through that. Next slide, please. So municipalities are not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but resourced to be able to manage the regulatory requirements as required on a mega BES installation. The location that they've chosen is either sitting directly upon or within very close proximity of the Salmon River watersheds and the aquifers. And the aquifers and the watersheds and the wildlife in that area provide 100% of our drinking water for our families. It's also home to a multitude of at-risk species, and it provides a great amount of tourists with hunting and fishing, and I'm sure we're all aware of the activities that go up in that location. Next slide, please. This has been home. This area has been home for many long-standing residents, and quite a few residents are coming in, as you've seen in the past couple of years, myself included. People are moving here, though, not because they want to live beside an industrial facility. They're not moving here because they want to listen to HVAC and electrical transformers, nor do they want to be sitting beside an explosive technology. And we don't want to have to worry about whether our wells will be safe now or in the future. Next slide, please. People live here and want to be a part of the rural community. They also want to enjoy the natural surroundings and the untreated natural fresh water supply for our homes and our families. And people are moving here to be good custodians to an area that's very rich in rural heritage. Next slide, yeah. So what are the greatest concerns? So number one, I believe the project has been presented in a very diminished scale. Deputy Reeve had made notations at our last meeting that when the solar project was being installed, I believe what was started out with in concept and what was landed on in finished product was quite a bit of a difference than what was originally understood. And secondly, there's a construction of an industrial facility in a rural residential area. We cannot emphasize that enough, is that this is not a place where you want to put any kind of industry. I don't know why you would want to, but obviously they've chosen it for whatever reasons. The location, again, is directly on top of the Salmon River watershed. And we're also finding too that the constructors that are bringing this to us, they really don't have the experience, or at the very least they lack the experience to design, build, and manage a BES. We'll speak to that in a later slide. The BES technology is only in a nascent stage. Regulations are too fluid and they rely upon the townships more so than an overriding regulations to regulate. Also, their existing communications infrastructure in that area is nowhere near adequate to provide any kind of a 100% uptime on monitoring of these systems. So next slide. What we wanted to talk about a little bit was that in the presentation that our friends at Blue Earth have given us, they show this as being a relatively small footprint. When I first took a look at it, I must admit, I thought of a couple of tractor trailers parked end to end and, you know, 1 or 2 boxes. So the relatively small footprint that they show is unrealistic. They're also, if you remember on the solar project, there was quite a bit of concern about transmission lines. And here we're right back into that same problem again, because they're proposing 250 transmission lines. They haven't spoken about it being underground. This is all planned on being overhead. They're also planning on putting a new high voltage substation. So high voltage substations, I don't know if anybody's had experience with them, but I've worked with them pretty extensively, and they do have a considerable amount of potential for explosion. They also have hot oil in them. Some of them have PCBs. There's a multitude of items that we could speak about in putting in another transformer in that location. So next slide. So what we tried to do is give you a bit of an idea of what a 200 megawatt BESS actually looks like. So this facility is located in China, and the picture that they had here, I couldn't find one that actually showed all of the sea containers. So this is only just a part of this facility, but it is an equivalent facility at 200 megawatts. Another note to see on here is that they're utilizing this technology in an area that's got relatively stable temperatures. If you take a look at their temperature swing in there, you know, you're looking at around a 20 degree, 30 degree swing, not 70, which is, and I don't think this is outside of our actual, what we feel is a plus 35, sometimes a minus 35 in this area. It can get pretty hot and it can get pretty cold. Next one that we tried to show was the Flower Valley 2. This is in Texas. And I also want to bring everybody's attention to the fact that these are being installed in quite arid, non-populated, non-forested, non-wildlife areas. And typically you would install these in an area that would have adequate resources, i.e. a water supply that was unlimited, that is immediately at the site. Not a well or something that you have to pump out of, or getting close to the Salmon River so that we can refill pumpers when they come in. These are all sitting in locations that have all of the natural needs and infrastructure as required for an installation such as this. Next slide, please. Just to give you a quick idea, these pictures were taken from where the actual BESS will be located. And so you can see there's a number of homes in here, and these are all taken from the location where the work will be taking place. So I think you can understand just from these pictures alone, and there's further, you can see just why people would be upset about having an installation of that nature parked in their back door. These are pictures of the farmland to which the proposed installation is to be put onto. It's some very nice farmland, and it is very well utilized currently, and it also sits at a very high end of the topography of the area. So one item of note would be is that should a problem exist or occur with respect to water, the water will all flow down naturally into the watershed area. Next slide, thank you. So these pictures were taken actually from within 500 meters of the proposed location. These areas don't dry. This is the Sheffield Bridge. This is out behind Fawns. This is all over that immediate area. And these areas are very, very, very well prone to having water, and they are where we get our water source from. As I was doing these pictures, I actually went around and I met up with a young lady who was unsolicited out cleaning the ditches. So I think you can appreciate just how much the community does invest their time in that. They would like to see the area kept as a clean and a natural source of enjoyment for all. Not to be left out is that we do have dark sky just up the road. And this picture that's down in the lower right-hand corner, I'd like to draw everybody's attention to it, is that this is a new resident in the area. They are constructing their home. And I'm quite sure that when they did their lot lines and when they did their initial severances, they had no idea that there was going to be immediately across from them a 200 megawatt BESS. And I don't know as you're going to be able to attract a great deal of people to the area if they ever were to put a facility of that nature in that location. So I think that's another item that we should be considering. Next slide. So this is kind of what the alternative is going to be. So that's what the land is going to look like. We've got considerable amount of transmission towers that are going in 250 meters. If you'll take a look on the Blue Earth proposal, you'll also note that they want to put another substation in. That's the substation up in the top left-hand corner. So they're going to be replicating that. The secondary side of that substation is in the top right-hand corner. That's where all your capacitor banks and your transformers are and your cutout switches. Thirdly, on the lower right, left-hand corner, that's where the transmission lines actually connect into the existing Hydro 250Ks. And those are the towers that everybody wants to be a part of for connecting into those lines in the lower right-hand corner. So we'd like to talk a little bit about who's proposing to design and install the Stone Mills MegaBESS. So Blue Earth, our friends at Blue Earth, they were founded in 2010. So that gives them 13 years. And then in 2019, their primary investor actually became a Dutch group called DIF Capital Partners. Now, if you take a look at DIF, they are very well known for public-private partnerships. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the 3P programs that have gone on, but those are basically where you come in and you work with the public, that'd be public investors, and you build an asset such as this BESS. The asset performs a need, and the asset gets sold. And sometimes those assets, in my experience, I've dealt with 6 3P projects in my lifetime, and they've all been sold before the project even finished. In fact, one of the 3Ps was sold 3 times before we even had substantial completion. So who knows what we're going to land on for an ownership at the end of this. So I think that's a concern. I think the bigger concern of the whole thing is that when we take a look at the portfolios of either DIF or Blue Earth, neither has any experience in the design, the construction, nor the management of a BESS. It's pretty volatile technology to be a proving ground for. And even if you were to hire in, our friends last time indicated that they were doing a joint venture with a battery supplier. If you recall that, Matt had indicated that. Suppliers are not the people who make the decisions. It's the people at the front end that make the decision. So Blue Earth ultimately would have to be the ones making the judgment calls. You could have a supplier whispering in your back ear all you want, but ultimately it's the experience is relied upon from the front end people to be able to make the decisions properly. Yep. Current regulations. I did a quick list of the regulations that cover this. So we've got CSA, we've got ESA, OBC. So this is Canadian Safety Standards Association, the Electrical Safety Association, Ontario Building, National Building, and NFPA. All of these have talked about concerns with respect to the emerging ES technology. Next slide. I pulled this directly from the NFPA. So NFPA, as of March 23rd, just revised their regulations. That's March 23rd of this year. Just revised their regulations on the monitoring of BESS. So with the regulations being that fluid, I think there's a concern that should be noted there. And these 2 slides on the right, you'll see these are directly from the NFPA site. And this is talking about what the problems are associated with BESS technology and ESSs. And you can obviously see the list of the cocktail that could be released. So I'm going to keep on moving here in the essence of time. And systems monitoring. One of the challenges, if you take a look, this group has done considerable amount of research and they should be commended for it. And the fact that they've found most every site that's had a challenge, excuse me, one of the biggest challenges has been in monitoring of that site and being able to constantly see that. And that is taking place through data lines, through internet, and what have you. The National Fire Protection Agency has said that they have to have both primary and redundant monitoring. Miller Road currently does not have a wired solution available. And the wireless that's in that area and the this whole group can speak to that, is sporadic at best. They need 100% uptime. So I'm going to go 2 slides ahead here, again, in the essence of time. Thermal runaway is the bigger problem here. And yeah, if you just click on that for 1 second, bring that towards 1 minute. Oh, you're on the PowerPoint or on the, yeah, you're not on the PowerPoint. That's okay. That's okay. What we would like to explain to people or have them understand at the very least is that this is thermal runaway we're speaking about. It is not a normal fire. And the NFPA have now acknowledged that most suppression systems that are out there on the market are currently there to suppress fires. They are not there to suppress thermal runaway. And 99% of the incidents that have happened, and they've happened from one cell degenerating, okay, is because of the thermal runaway. So if we see this for 1 minute, if it doesn't work, that's fine. No, just click on the video. It should work. There you go. We're just going to draw that up to 1 minute again for the essence of time. We'll go forward with it. There we go. So, yeah, sure. So you'll see the fire has just started at this point. So this is where the detectors would start be notifying the local agencies of a fire. And as this fire starts to build, you have a gas off situation that takes place. Gas is the release of toxic and flammable gases within the enclosure. Once those gases start to ignite, there you go. Now you have thermal runaway. So one of the methods that our friends at Blue Earth indicated that the way that they fight these fires is just put water on it. That is not an appropriate response. Just throw water on it does not work. We'll go to the next slide for a second. So I'm going to go through and leave this with you for the most part because I think we've covered the majority of it because with respect to us not being an industrial park, they've never been involved with the BES, that's Blue Earth, and there are very few regulations, substantial fire risk, and it's sitting on top of the Salmon River. What I do want to take a moment to talk about the fact that we had sent out questions. The questions were sent out by this council to Blue Earth. The promise was made at that time that Blue Earth would answer every single one of those questions as they were presented. That has not occurred. The other aspect of this is that I think we should really understand that in December 2022, IESO was commented on whether or not municipality approval was required. They issued an addendum to indicate that, yes, indeed, municipality approval is required. We spoke about this further at our March 23rd delegation. But yet a letter has gone out from our friends at Blue Earth on April the 11th, and I can provide you all a copy. It is public knowledge. On April the 11th, requesting that municipalities be removed from that approval process because they were finding that the municipalities from our experience working in 4 jurisdictions are seeking advanced development plans such as site development applications, rezoning amendment applications, regular. I can go on, but I can provide you this document. I think it's important that you understand that they are trying to go around the municipal approval process. And we do not want this in our area. And this is, I believe the technology is great technology. I think the need for it is there, especially with all of the emerging needs for charging stations and electric. But I do not believe that the technology is safe, nor should it be deployed at this point in time. 10 years from now, we might be able to say that it's a safer technology. I also believe that there's an additional 2 or 3 sites that are far more appropriate in a far less densely populated area that still contain 250 megawatt or 250 K line taps on them. So I've done a lot of driving around the area to try and find them. I did find 2 locations that would be suitable for them, and but again, we don't have them to speak with tonight on this. So I do appreciate your time, and any questions that councillor you may have, please.
Thank you, Michael. Questions or comments, Michael, at this point? Yes, Crystal Lee, go ahead.
I would thank you for your presentation, and I would ask that you do send us that letter. I find it kind of interesting that
For sure.
they are trying, like we sat here in a conversation with them, and it was, one thing, but then to hear that they're advocating to IESO that we don't have a say what happens in our own communities is a little bit traveling. So I would appreciate reading that letter, and I'm sure everyone else would as well.
What's even more concerning, to be honest with you, is when you take a look at the trail of the communication, the minister put out a letter very clearly stating that it is in the right of the municipality to say yay or nay. That was pretty simple. December the 23rd, that was issued. That was issued in an addendum covered by IESO, but yet you've still got proponents that are trying to usurp the process. I think there's more to this than meets the eye, and I think we really need to, before we can go too much further with it, is understand exactly where Blue Earth is coming from and how they plan on managing this through. My understanding is that the communication with Blue Earth is going to come through council with respect to the date of the community meeting. We have not heard anything directly, which is a good thing because we should have a one source of contact, but we would like to have those questions that we had answered, and we'd also like to have a little bit more conversation and dialogue.
Sherry.
I believe the date was posted today on the township website
Yeah.
of May 16th.
Exactly. That's perfect. And I think that's great. But again, there was nothing, there had been some conversation about it being relayed to us. If the chosen conduit is through council, I'm all for that. One person, one place for it to go. So
One more
that's
thing.
smart.
Go
Could
ahead.
we, one more quick thing. Can we also have a copy of that letter from December from the minister?
100%. Oh, as well, Jason put out a great letter, and that's kind of where the impetus was on this, was your original letter on this, Jason, too, because they failed to answer you adequately, I believe. It's just my own feeling. And I do believe that they are trying to force the hand. I've also got, by the way, from the National Fire Protection Agency, there's a document out that's called Is Your Community Ready? I think it's a very worthwhile read. And it is the National Fire Protection Agency. They will be the governing body, the authority having jurisdiction on the actual install. Ultimately, though, we will be the authority having jurisdiction. So,
Wenda.
Yes. Thank you very much, Michael, for coming and
Thank you.
discussing all of this with us.
Hmm.
One thing you'd mentioned that you hadn't received any responses. I know later on in this agenda, we have a presentation or an agenda item from Blue Earth that contains a lot of answers in it. I'm not happy with the answers, and I'll probably be addressing that when we come to that agenda item. I don't know if you're planning to stick around for that topic or not.
I didn't want, we weren't going to stick around because we felt that it was just going to be the talk about the community meeting, but I think we will stick around if they're going to address some questions. I didn't understand that part
Yeah,
of it. So
it was sort of deeply embedded into their presentation.
I don't doubt it was. Yes. Yes.
Anyone else? A couple of questions. Jason, have we had any application from Blue Earth for this project?
Through your worship, that's a good question. I believe there was a requirement for Blue Earth to provide formal application, if you will, via letter to the CAO of the municipality. And that was done, issued to Brian Brooks' attention. I forget the date off the top of my head, but yes, I believe that was received to CAO Brooks, your worship.
So I wasn't aware of that. So basically that's an official application for this project?
Through you, I'm not clear on what submission details are. And, as you're aware, under the Planning Act, we have strict details of what constitutes a submission and a formal application. I'm not sure if IESO deems that letter informing the municipality as to their proposal a formal application or not. That'd be clarification that we would at staff's level have to seek through IESO, your worship.
If I may,
Go ahead.
just for a moment here. So to speak to that, and that does not. And what they're going to be looking for is a letter from yourselves, essentially a memorandum of understanding. That's actually described within the ELT1 procurement process, is that they do need to have a letter to say that we're working in kind with Blue Earth to, towards the proposal that they're speaking of. So they're looking for some kind of a memorandum of understanding from the council to say that we're not saying no, but we're not saying yes at this point in time, and that will satisfy them to go forward with it. So
when you say them, you mean Blue Earth?
that's IESO
That's
would allow
IESO.
Blue Earth to submit based on having that letter. That's correct.
So part of an official application includes a submission to IESO. So at this point, my feeling is we have had no official application, regardless of that letter. That may be a letter that's a notice of intent or something to that effect, a courtesy to inform us that they're thinking of this. So my feeling is we still don't have an application for a project. It's all just a maybe at this point. I believe that Blue Earth stated when they were here previously that their final deadline for submission of their project plan was 18 months from, I think, this June. So they've got a long time here to get ready to answer concerns, if they can answer them, to the public and council's satisfaction. So it's good to be out in front of this, and the information you're gathering is useful. What we also need is, as we get further down this road, is whatever expertise we can draw on, no disrespect, but we also need to have some kind of, perhaps through our fire department, representation from the Fire Safety Association, whatever other industry expertise we can draw on to give us some advice as well. We need information from every credible source that we can find. I agree. I'm glad you said, Michael, you recognize the need for battery electric storage. If we're going to have renewables, we need to even out supply because of the uncertainty of supply. It's a matter of where they go. So all that has to be determined at this point. Thank you for your presentation.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate your even-handedness and lack of alarmism. I always like to hear community concerns when they're delivered with aggression and borderline hysteria. It doesn't create a convivial atmosphere for discussion. We've got to remain a community here, and the tone of your presentation is firm, but it's by no means aggressive, and it allows for a collegial atmosphere of discussion. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion to receive Michael's presentation? Sherry and Doug, all in favor? Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. I'll follow up with those the documents, and if it's okay with you, Your Worship, I'll send them through Jason.
That would be great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Our next item C is Graham McDonald, resident of Camden East, regarding the proposed trail development. I guess the Napanee proposal. So this isn't directly Stone Mill's business, but Graham thinks that we should hear his opinion on this proposal, and I appreciate you coming, Graham. If you press that silver button, that will activate the microphone, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Reeve. I hope to convince you otherwise that it is indeed Stone Mill's business. Mr. Reeve and Council, thank you very much. My name is Graham McDonald. As stated, I'm nearly a 30-year resident of the village of Camden East, and as a longtime resident who set up shop here as a young man and raised a family, I've seen a lot of changes within the community and municipal government from the old township of Camden East to the present day. I almost consider myself qualified now to say that I'm from here. I can say with conviction, however, that I am fully invested in our community and consider myself a cheerleader and an ambassador of sorts for Stone Mills, including professionally as a realtor and proudly assisting those moving to Stone Mills and within Stone Mills. The subject of my presentation this evening is an important example of the reasons that I'm proud to be from here. I appreciate you making room for my presentation on the agenda this evening to bring forth an important matter that very directly affects the residents of Stone Mills and our future potential for increased economic benefits, transportation options, recreational activities, and greater options for every resident and visitor to maintain a healthy and happy, active lifestyle. I come to you this evening to discuss the Cataraqui Trail, one of the true jewels of this township and the long overdue matter of the as yet incomplete final leg continuing into Napanee, the trail's natural and obvious connecting point along the old CN rail line. I know that some of you are quite familiar with the history and the operation of the Cat Trail. its evolution from the old CN rail line to a very popular shared use trail from Strathcona to Smiths Falls, and its intersections with other regional trails in Eastern Ontario that connect us to the trail network and its many ports of call throughout the region. For the sake of brevity, I will refer anyone not familiar with the trail and its history to the Cataraqui Trail website, managed by the CRCA with the assistance from the Friends of the Cataraqui Trail. But as a longtime former member and vice chair of the Cataraqui Trail Management Board, which has since morphed into the Friends of the Cataraqui Trail, and an avid trail rider very familiar with the different segments traveling through neighboring townships up to Smiths Falls, I can without equivocation or reservation of any kind state that the portion of the trail running through Stone Mills is the best maintained and the finest example of a successful municipal partnership and leadership for the Cat Trail, working with the CRCA, Friends of the Cat Trail, LNA Ridge Runners, and other stakeholders who benefit from this township's commitment to its residents, recognizing the importance of providing critical healthy living, travel, and recreational options. For this, our councillors and staff of the past 25 years have not received enough thanks or recognition, in my opinion, but please know that many of us, hundreds of us, appreciate it. The resources Stone Mills allots for the Cat Trail come back to local residents in the form of significant health and welfare benefits that should be measured as exponential gains on the investment made. And the rewards to the township and our residents are many. So for your forward-thinking advocacy and leadership, I thank you on behalf of many, many residents and local trail users. The physical and mental health benefits of regional trails are beyond dispute as alternative travel options for walking, long-distance hikers and cyclists, and the economic benefits they bring to merchants, services, and accommodation providers in the area are many. Local trails are of great benefit too to the snowmobile community, and the economic spin-off from them is, as I'm sure you're all aware, very significant. If you're unsure of this, just go down to have a conversation with Justin or Lindsay down at McCormick's. Allow me to briefly outline some of the established proven benefits to communities with developed and maintained trails. Increased physical, emotional, and mental wellness of residents, cyclists, and walkers. Trails increase the equity of access for more people to goods, services, and amenities by traveling the trails between towns and villages without motorized vehicles. Decrease stress and safety concerns on roadways for cyclists and drivers and reducing the carbon output of the entire area. It enhances the branding of Lennox and Addington, Stone Mills, and the Cataraqui Trail as destinations for choice for cyclists and hikers who can connect through to other areas and connecting trails in the region. And this will be magnified significantly, potentially, with the trailhead in Napanee. It promotes multiple retail and accommodates businesses and creates opportunities for future operators of tour companies and rental outfitters. Trails, like here in Stone Mills, demonstrate a collaborative working model of effective community engagement by municipal government, residents, local active trail groups, and regional stakeholders. I would add anecdotally that in my experience as a real estate professional working with buyers coming into Stone Mills, or indeed into any area in the region that has nearby access to the regional trail network, it is considered a real asset and a value added to the property to be nearby trails for a very large cross-section of consumers from all age groups and potential new residents. This past winter, a group of community members, mainly from Napanee, with the participation of a few of us from Stone Mills, organized a community group now called the Active Transportation Allies, ATA, with the specific mandate to see increased healthy transportation and recreational options in and around Greater Napanee. Topping the agenda was consideration of the old CN rail line out of Napanee to the east into Stone Mills, which are public lands owned by Greater Napanee. Looking for leadership and advocacy from the town of Napanee, and with the spirit of open collaboration and the very best interests of all Napanee and area residents in mind, a proposal was made by this community group at the February council meeting by two leading organizers of the ATA, including a former chief of staff of the LNA County Hospital and a respected local family physician who is, for various obvious reasons, a strong advocate for healthy transportation and recreation options in the area. They presented an articulate and well thought out presentation with a list of specific community, mental and physical health benefits for residents of the area, as well as the future economic benefits to Napanee and the region as a whole. Regrettably, the delegation met pretty strong opposition to this proposal at the meeting from at least one neighboring landowner when it came to specifically discussing the 1 kilometer of publicly owned rail line from the 401 east to Minks Bridge and the border of Stone Mills. I'll not speculate on what transpired in the subsequent days or how council and staff came to recommend the following course of action, but going with the simplest explanation, it seems pretty evident what happened. The very lands in question, which have been publicly owned for decades and represent the only available link to the rail bridge over the 401 and access from Napanee to and from the Cataraqui Trail, were quickly declared surplus lands for the purposes of selling them off. A stunningly swift and very obvious response to the proposal made by the community group proposing the link to the Cat Trail continuing into Napanee. I've only briefly summarized the above timeline and events in generalities, being careful not to misrepresent the specifics in any way. It is or should be public record how this sudden change in status of these public lands to surplus lands came to be decided. But when records were requested for the meeting at which this decision was made, the group was told that it was a closed in-camera session and that the matter could be taken up with the tribunal in Toronto. The declaration of surplus land and the decision to dispose of the public property will now be further discussed in a public meeting on May 11th at 7 p.m. at the Strathcona Paper Centre. So hopefully some real dialogue and input is still possible. As of earlier today, this is now all outlined in a pretty comprehensive and concise article in the Kingston Whig, which goes into greater detail on the timeline of events, as well as naming the specific parties involved. The article also reports a significant participation from Napanee residents, now numbering over 1,000 on the online petition and hundreds additionally signing the door-to-door petition that door knockers are taking around town. This kind of resident voter engagement and support is, of course, critical for Napanee Council to see and hard for them to ignore. But support for the trail coming from Stone Mills Council is very important too for Napanee to recognize the benefits of the trail and to be able to discuss trail stewardship with an experienced and supportive neighboring municipal government and staff, eager to provide counsel and partner with them in whatever ways possible to make the trail completion into Napanee a reality. We here in Stone Mills know well the benefits and importance the trail holds for many residents and businesses. If you don't, I'd be happy to return at a future date to present this council with more history, ownership information, and data on engagement and local trail use, as well as feedback from local merchants on the benefits to them. It's a no-brainer, however, that the potential future benefit to Stone Mills and all the connected communities along the Cataraqui Trail and having the trail connected through to Napanee would be a game changer. And for many Stone Mill residents like myself who would regularly bike back and forth to Napanee, as well as an uptick for existing businesses and potential new startups in the villages and towns along the trail. To not do everything we can as a township to try and facilitate the trail completion into Napanee would not only mean losing these future growth and healthy living benefits, but the disposal of the neighboring public lands in question will dash these hopes forever. As once that land with the only connecting access to the rail bridge over the 401 is gone, so too will any future possibility for a connected trail with our nearest and largest population center be gone forever. I also recognize, of course, that the rail line is privately owned from Strathcona to Minks Bridge, and that there's work to do here in Stone Mills as well, to sit down with the owners of the rail line along that stretch to discuss collaborative ways that trail development and access can be granted, while also ensuring that those landowners have their interests and liability protected and safeguarded. This will require dialogue and possibly some creative solutions, but this will all be moot and none of it will matter if the 1 kilometer of public land from Minks Bridge to the 401 is disposed of. With meaningful dialogue, cooperation, and open communication, there's no reason to believe that the connecting leg of the trail into Napanee cannot be completed, and that it has to have any negative effect on any budding landowners at all. We have 100 kilometers plus of existing cat trail that goes from Strathcona up to Smiths Falls. I've had a lot of years of involvement with the trail, and I'm aware of very, very few incidents of any major import at all with neighboring landowners, particularly farmers, where there's been any issues along the way. I just offer this anecdotally as somebody who has been involved with the trail, and I know that Councillor Davison could probably back that up. My request to Council this evening is for Stone Mills, as regional leaders in trail stewardship, to provide Napanee Council and staff some neighborly support by way of a quick response delivered to Council via the clerk and CAO to reconsider the disposal of these publicly owned lands, which would forever end any conversation of the Cat Trail making its way into Napanee. The public meeting is on May 11th, so the response I'm requesting, which I sincerely hope would be unanimously supported by those around this table, will need to be presented to Napanee in the next few days. I regret the lack of time available to craft this response, but I hope you all recognize the urgency the situation requires. I submit this respectfully with my thanks in advance for your leadership in this matter and for your advocacy on behalf of the residents of Stone Mills through your ongoing commitment to the Cataraqui Trail and all municipally owned parkland, waterfront, and green spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham, for that eloquent presentation. Any questions or comments for Graham? See, yes, Doug.
I'd just like to make a suggestion, seeing how there's another presentation, that we reserve comments until we've heard all the presentations this time. I think that would be beneficial to have all the information on the table first before there's a discussion, because I'm sure there's information coming on the second delegation that may not 100% agree with what Graham said. So we need to see both sides of the story, I think. I'd just like to reserve that comment until we've heard the whole story.
I don't think there were any questions for it coming in any case. So can I get a motion to receive Graham's presentation? Wenda and Crystal Lee, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Graham.
Okay, thank you very much.
Item D is a delegation from Mill Spring Farms Incorporated about the same issue. Who's going to speak for Mill Spring Farms? Gentlemen. So to activate the microphone, you just press the silver button and just introduce yourselves, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for your time tonight. My name is Dave Milligan. Along with my cousin Mark and my father Wayne, we own and operate Mill Spring Farms. We farm also in Stone Mills Township, Loyalist Township, Greater Napanee. So I'm very familiar with many of you. Anyways, you're going to have to, I'm going to have to apologize. This is our busy season. It's our planning season. So we are essentially coming here with a little slideshow and no long speeches. We're just talking to you just like we would with anyone else, just to explain this situation. So we milk purebred Holstein cows. We sell the milk to the local dairies in the area, many of which Wilton, Reed's Dairy, Ivanhoe, take our products and process them further into products that are in everyone's shelves, fridges. We also produce corn, soybeans, wheat, oats, barley, which then gets sold for further processing and winds up on many of your shelves as cereal, bread, beer. There's tons of options for where our products go. We learned about this situation last minute before a council meeting, and I went with my family to explain to the council how this was going to detrimentally affect our farm, as did Rob Sutton, who also had was speaking. He got to speak on behalf of Strathcona Paper Mill, who was a dead set no against any walking trail, cycling trail going through their operation. We expressed our concerns with many of the issues of this, being blindsided mainly by the lack of dialogue from this group that has been working behind the scenes to try to develop a trail, yet did not speak with any of the adjacent landowners or the landowners that they hope to push this through. That was kind of troubling to our family, as it was to the Sutton family. After speaking to council, I think council understood where we stand, as we're in our fourth generation of working on this farm, living in the area. We would be sixth generation in Stone Mills to own the land that we own along Howes Road and Frizzell Road in Tamworth. Anyways, both of our families have young kids who have passion in agriculture, hope to carry on the family farm, and that isn't something that you see every day. I've been all over Ontario, dealt with many other farmers. Agriculture is our biggest industry in Lennox and Addington, and there is so many families where the next generation is not interested in doing such thing. There's many other options out there. This is a rare opportunity where you have families with kids that want to carry on the tradition of the family farm. This trail would run essentially through our farm, splitting our fields, our barns, and running within very close proximity to a lot of our animals. Our biosecurity would be totally lost as a result of this. I realize the Cataraqui Trail, it works very well in your area. Your area has a lot of people that drive to the trail, that respect the trail. The residents respect the trail. We live next to Napanee. The Napanee and 401 corridor has a lot of people that don't respect a whole heck of a lot, to be honest. I would say it's kind of like the 90-10 rule. 90% of the residents are very good. They're community minded. They're passionate about the area. Then there's the 10% that don't care about anything. With our proximity to town, we deal with the 10%. We've had thefts, vandalism, fires on our property, mainly as a result to this rail line, because it is a access point for our farm. If this trail is opened up, this turns into a highway through our farm that will compromise not only our animal safety, our family safety, our worker safety. And I don't know who is going to come and milk our cows when we're not able to do so as self-employed individuals. I surely don't think that the town of Napanee staff are going to come and milk our cows or plant our crops or harvest our crops if something happens, which it will happen. And everyone says fences and gates, fences and gates. We've had fences and gates stolen, the hinges cut off, the fences cut. We are right on the 401 corridor. There is no breathing room for any accidents whatsoever. This is not a very good idea whatsoever. I understand the benefits of connecting the Cataraqui Trail to Napanee. I understand no one is here to talk about active living and that it's a negative thing. There's tons of benefits to active living and being physically active. But it can also go in other places. It does not have to run through our farm, Rob Sutton's farm. It will wreck our business. We will be done. Rob Sutton will not be able to carry on and pass that farm on to his family as well. These are things that are not negotiable. This is a very, very serious matter to us. And that's, I guess, why we're both here tonight. I'll turn it over to Mark.
So if you look at the proposed trail that they're considering, their ideas to come from Deserano all the way to Stone Mills. So that map, the lines in red will show all the sections of land that are owned by private landowners. So in order to make that happen, there needs to be apparently a lot of land expropriation done, or a lot of commitment from local landowners to say that they want this trail. As for discussion with owners on the west side of Napanee, there are also a lot of agriculture businesses over there, which I know are greatly disturbed by this proposal. As well as we've had discussions, like Dave said, with Rob and his relationship with Strathcona, who does not have an interest in having their corridor next to their pits and their corridor for the pulp that they use frequently turned into a walking trail. It is just too much of an issue. So we're here to highlight these main issues. And if you would look on the next slide, please, you will see, so that yellow line is the township boundary. Everything in the red is obviously Stone Mills, and those are 3 privately owned sections of land. So Strathcona owns 2 of them, and that solar company owns the other section. They have expressed no desire to join this endeavor from our response with Rob and his connections at the plant, that he's talked to them and said they do not want this. So if they're not on board, I believe there would be some expression from council to have to try and make a move to push them on board or some other type of dialogue. That green section is essentially our entire farm operation. We farm on both sides of that green line, and they would like to bring the trail over the 401 and put it through our entire operation to currently a dead end, because after that, it is private owned land. And there is no interest from what we've heard in making that any different from the business level. If you go to the next slide, this is our main dairy operation. So what Dave was talking about is those are distances from the potential trail to all of our main buildings, our feed storage, our concentrates, our livestock, all of our machinery, all of our assets. It is very, very close proximity. Everything is right there. Like there's also access points from the south and the north that we currently have issues with that people attempt to use, whether they gain connection from the rail line, they come out, they see a crossing, they say, this looks like a much better walk, and they are on our land. We have issues with it all the time. We have homeless encampments that we need to remove from our property. All last summer, they come down this trail, they find a nice little cedar patch on our land, and they make home. So we are into issues already, and the trail currently grew up with cedars, parsnip. It's a tough travel, and they still manage to make their way through. As for the transportation aspect of it and the active transportation, we are not against active transportation. We are just against this route. And there are multiple other routes that can be proposed and have been proposed, but this group is stuck on this route alone. And within the county and at the county level, all of these county roads that have been redone throughout Lennox and Addington since 2007 have been redone with active transportation lanes to the outside of all county roads. There's a 1.2 to 1.5 meter chunk of asphalt that the county puts on all of these roads. And according to the Lennox and Addington Master Transportation Plan, it is, and I quote, I didn't bring it with me, but is for pedestrians, for joggers, for cyclists. And that route from County Road 1, which is essentially the end of our driveway out in Napanee, is 6.86 kilometers. That has a paved shoulder that you can currently use and which people do currently use. On weekends, there's lots of joggers, there's lots of cyclists. And it's 6.86 kilometers from that point of our driveway to get to the entrance of the Cat Trail on the east side of Strathcona. So there's already networks that are there. It is just not the preferred network of certain individuals and certain groups. Instead, they would sooner maintain that going through the middle of an agricultural operation is for the benefit of community, when realistically it's for the benefit of this group, because you can already get the benefits from tourism, from active living, from active transportation, from routes that are already provided. Throughout LNA County, there's also 12 other current cycling routes. That one runs along Palace Road, goes out to Newburgh, comes back, and comes back County Road 1. It's already a designated LNA County cycling route. It's 30 kilometers long, and it's on the LNA website. There's already these routes that go to the same place. It's just not the preferred route of certain individuals. So if you go to the next slide, right to the north of the rail line, this is what we look at every day. These are our fields. This is what we want to maintain. We are farmers, and this is what we want to protect. And if you go to the next slide, this is what the KMP Trail in Kingston has turned into. If you go downtown Kingston and you look at this wonderful trail that they would like to say is amazing, this is what you get when you put it close to an urban setting. This isn't rural. This isn't Camden East. This isn't Yarker. This is next to cities and larger towns. These bring bigger problems. And this is what we're here for tonight. We are having a request from council to show your support for local agriculture, to show your support for us, and recognize that that land in Stone Mills is privately owned land, and that there's not interest to push for that development through one of Stone Mills's largest industrial, tax bases, as well as employers, and as well as its private property, and as well to ensure that by not doing that, the interest to drive through our protected farmland should be diminished.
You just have a very brief comment.
It's very brief. I guess I'd just like to say, after reading like the OFA guideline for rails to trails, one of the first things they mention is communication with landowners and adjoining landowners. And we had no communication. We were totally blindsided by this group. Since presenting to council, we had no idea that they were going to surplus this land. That was as much of a surprise to us as it was to many others. Since that moment, the online attitude, the bullying, the misinformation towards our family, the Sutton family, has been unbelievable. These people call themselves allies. The bully tactics, the amount of misinformation, we've never been asked once about our side of the situation for the paper. They only print what these people are spewing to them. They are not asking for the whole story. And I mean, the drones flying over in our backyards, taking pictures during birthday parties for kids is ridiculous. This has turned into a very hostile situation that, quite frankly, communication from the start, 100% would have been the way to go. At this point, zero communication is where it's going. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. Questions or comments from council? Wenda.
Just one thing that wasn't brought up that I'm going to bring up. The slide, Christina, if we go backwards, can you go backwards on the slideshow? Maybe the next one back. Yes. Okay. See the big dark green forest between Goodyear Road and Sutton's property, that the big forest in there. I know from personal experience that the Suttons use that for hunting. And I can't imagine why anybody would want to be walking on the trail with animals coming up off the river during hunting season, which is October to December 31st. That's a big risk. That's something that nobody's even talked about. And I know that they use it for that. They have friends of the family and whatever that go down because it leads down into the river. And they hunt there a lot, actually.
If I
So
may.
that would be another detriment to what you're talking about as far as that stretch goes.
If I may, I know this as well because I hunt with the Suttons, and they hunt our land as well, which is right close to where the trail would be as well. So I mean, it's a shotgun hunt, but I mean we do hunt it as well. All these concerns, though, when I brought them up, the town council listens. This group does not listen. When we cross the rail bed numerous times throughout the year, we're crossing every 3 or 4 minutes with heavy equipment at full speed. My question is who's liable? Like, this isn't like crossing the Cat Trail in Sydenham or in Harrowsmith, where someone might go and cross there once a season or 4 times a season. This is like a highway, and the liability is on the town. The liability is going to be on the town for this situation, and they don't want the liability.
Anything further? Go ahead, Doug.
Actually, I wish Graham would come up and sit at the chair beside us at the table. Graham, I'd like to kind of put one thing at rest right away. First thing, and Tim, it's Tim, eh? Dave, sorry, I don't know why I keep wanting to call you Tim. Dave, you said it well. Nobody's talked. You fellas should sit together and talk. Okay? I'm gonna ramble for a minute, but I've been known to be quite blunt at times also. So I want to give you a little background. I've been the township's representative on the Cat Trail for, I don't know, the better part of 15 years, I guess. I'm an active trail supporter, and Graham done an excellent job of outlining the benefits of the Cat Trail. There was a survey done a year ago. We have people from Aaronsville, Tamworth, Enterprise, Deserana, Bath, Amherstview, Napanee, Kingston that come and park in our parking lots and travel on our trail. Okay. Over the years, conceptually, we have talked on a number of occasions of extending, or how would we extend the trail to Napanee? The benefits of it, both for Napanee and for everybody else. The Cataraqui Trail, which starts or ends, depending on your point of view, on the east side of Strathcona Paper Mill, runs 102 kilometers to Smith Falls. It intersects with the KP Trail. You can go all the way to Pembroke. Intersects with the Rideau Trail. You can end up in the Parliament buildings if you want. It has great connections. You can also go to Kingston and look at what you showed, which is an eyesore, and I agree with you. I was present at the council meeting. I was requested to be there in Napanee when the presentation was made a month ago. I listened to your presentation, and I sympathize and agree with what you had to say for the same reason as that picture you showed. I believe with the social economic problem in the municipal, in the urban area, you have an issue that needs to be addressed, okay? For use, for your security of your operation and your safety. Okay. The Cat Trail, and we're very fortunate, we would work with the Strathcona Paper Mill. They allow us to use part of their property as parking lot, and about 800 feet of their property is trail. We cross their property. We work very well with it. And as Graham so aptly put, people find all kinds of peace, physical and mental peace on the trail. People tell you that when you talk to them. Okay. It's not uncommon to meet somebody that come from Milton or someplace else on a bicycle. They've come down the waterfront trail, stayed in the motels in Kingston and come on. Anyways, unfortunately, and there's where I get to reality. Unfortunately, if we'd had our druthers way back when, maybe the whole rail bed would have been a trail. Maybe. But it isn't. It stops at Strathcona. Strathcona Paper Mill and the Suttons, or whichever, own the bulk of the land in Stone Mills. And they've integrated it into their operation. With that integration, they feel, I'm almost certain, that it's not a good fit to have the public involved in that close to that industrial and intensive farming operation. That presents a challenge for us, and here's where I take off. I'm not here to tell Napanee what to do. I'm just here to tell people that the extension or connection or whatever you want to call it of the trail to other trails has some issues that needs to be addressed. One, we don't know what the route is going to be because of the private ownership. Because we don't know what the route's going to be, we don't know whether it's a multi-use trail or just a bike path. And I'm certain that the group in Napanee would prefer it not to be just a bike path if they had their druthers. If they had their druthers. Okay, it'd be better to be a multi-use trail. Okay. Even when you get through Stone Mills and you get into Napanee, how do you connect? The trail's on the other side of the river. Okay. If you go on to 401, then you got an issue, how do you cross 401? And currently, the County Road 1 bridge is not adequate for pedestrian traffic. It's not wide enough. There's no way there. Those issues all need to be addressed. And I'm going to go back to your end statement. It's too bad discussion hadn't happened before it run away, because this is not a new issue. So I'm surprised that all of a sudden it seems to be a surprise, because I know Constable Weiss probably 8 or 9 years ago attended Napanee council meetings and talked to them about extending the trail. I believe it's even in the records, if you go back, that Napanee did take some action with that trail. So I'm surprised that it's all of a sudden new information. What I would like to suggest, very simply, is this. Everybody involved, not Dave, not Graham, or not anybody other person, everybody else, everybody involved. This is a good thing for the community if it could be made to work while we address everybody's concerns. To do that, people need to hit the pause button. They need to step back, take a deep breath, and then come together and say, is there a way we can accomplish this? What will the route look like? Can we meet everybody's concerns? And then go forward and see what can be done. Because I don't believe it's going to happen overnight. It just means that people need to take time to do it. And I would really hope that nobody ends up to be enemies over this, because none of you deserve it, to be honest with you. Some people want one benefit, some people want security. And I just would like to see people press the pause button right now and take a deep breath and say, how can we make this work? Thank you.
Mr. Reeve, your worship, through you to Dave and the Milligan family. So if I could just have a couple of minutes to set a bit of context for that request that I made. Is that possible?
I'm going to let you speak, but I want to point out something here. This is absolutely a Napanee decision. This council, and as far as I know, our official plan makes no reference to extending a trail through private lands. There's been no informal discussions among council or staff. We don't have a dog in this fight other than to generally approve of recreation and trail use and generally approve of the security and privacy of private land. Whatever debate is about to ensue here is best held in front of Napanee Council.
If I could just set your mind at ease, Mr. Reeve, that I have no intention of debate. In fact, what I do have to say, I think is probably quite pertinent to the request that I've made. So I met once with the group that is now called the ATA, the Active Transportation Alliance, last year, one time in person, expressing my interest that back from what Councillor Davison said when Constable Weiss and I were meeting with Napanee years ago to ask if this was something that was even possible. The intention of the initial conversations that I had with the group were to explore whether or not it would be something that council would even consider about the approval of public lands used for that purpose. I can't state strongly enough or sincerely enough that, the imposition that Dave describes on his land is in no way the intention of what anybody wants. I can't speak for other people that are a part of this group in Napanee, and I certainly can't speak for Napanee residents that clearly are behaving in a disgusting and reprehensible manner, certainly towards the family from what I've just heard from Dave. But, that was certainly never, all I can speak for is myself as a resident here making a deputation to you. And that was certainly never part of the program here. But I would suggest that based on what Dave has shown us tonight with proximity to the operation in behind, which you can't see from the road. What I can see from the road is a lot of field and then a trail. I'm intimately familiar with the other 102 kilometers of the trail going through fields and farms that there's just no issue with. So perhaps naively, that was my assumption that would also be the case here, which clearly it isn't. But anyway, based on, I think, Dave and his family's good points here, I would like to retract my request and not have Stone Mills intercede, certainly not on my behalf.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, go ahead, Dave. And then I think we're going to have to wrap this one up. We're almost 2 hours into our agenda, and we've got a lot of business to do here.
Sorry, John. I won't. I appreciate that, Graham. I appreciate your comments. Doug, the meeting in Napanee and your comments toward communication. After that meeting, when I was exiting the building, I ran into Tom Tuzel, who is the physician from Napanee that very much in support of the trail network. We had a great discussion. I felt like it was a step forward. He said, I didn't understand a lot of your family's position on this matter. And he said, I think we really need to have some better communication in finding a path. He said, ultimately, it is my vision to try to connect these trails. And I said, Tom, our family is active in all physical activities around Napanee. They're in sports, they're cyclists, they run. I said, I want to help you make these trail networks work. But I said, in putting businesses out of work that are multi-generational businesses, so that isn't something I would support, not just because it's my business. I wouldn't support that in general. I would not support that in any situation. And I felt like it was a step forward. It was exactly what you said, Doug. It was not so much butting heads, it was communication. And I said to Tom, that's the only way to get things done is through communication. That's what makes communities. Fast forward to when the land was surplus, we were shocked, they were shocked, and all of a sudden, it's those dirty farmers and everyone's after us. And anyways, the communication was moving forward and then it got sidetracked. And since then, there's been lots of things put online about us and the Sutton family and what we're trying to do. We're just trying to produce food. We're just trying to produce some of the safest, highest quality food for the residents in the area. We're just raising families. We're not doing anything wrong here. We're just trying to continue the tradition of farming. And that's all we're looking to do, is try to carry on raising our families, and hopefully everyone else can do the same with theirs.
Thank you. Anything further? Could I get a motion to receive the Milligan Farm presentation? Krista Lee and Wenda. Any further discussion? Thanks very much, gentlemen. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 6, bylaws and resolutions. A is a zoning amendment application D 12-2022-69 County Road 4 West. And I need a motion that bylaw 2023, yet to be fully numbered, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2014-744 as amended at 629 County Road 4 West, be read a first, second, and third time and passed this first day of May 2023. Can I get a motion for that, please? Sherry and Wendy. Jason, do you want to tell us what this is about? I think we already had plenty of information on it, but just to refresh our memories.
Certainly. Through your worship, this application was presented in public forum on April 3rd. So I think, as you note, those of you around the table can recall, essentially the applicant is seeking to rezone to a site-specific hamlet commercial zone, a C1-3 zone, to allow for a broadened set of commercial uses to make way for the development of a proposed commercial plaza, as well as a self-storage facility that would be developed on the proposed severed lot that encompasses the existing car wash fronting County Road 4. There's provisional approval associated with a consent or a severance application to create that land holding. And one of the conditions is that the applicant successfully rezone. Hence the reason we're before you, or the applicant is before you this evening with the bylaw. The broadened permitted commercial uses are within, and within the staff report, we tried to provide a differentiation as to what's currently permitted on site versus what's proposed through this to confirm those additional uses. Happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Any questions or comments on this item? Yes, Wenda.
I just wanted to refer to the attachment regarding consolidated public comments. I think the number one question was addressed through the hydrogeological study. Number two, they're talking about the design of the commercial space. That's really not anything I would like to talk to, but the other one was the third item was talking about putting up a cedar a fence of some kind, like visual screening, if you will. Is that something that can be built into the site plan control agreement?
Through your worship, you're 100% correct, Councillor Lalonde. It is. It's something that we've had discussions at staff level with the applicant regarding including within site plan control. However, we've gone a step further given the concerns from the public, and it's built within the zoning bylaw that's before you. So section 1 sub 3 has a planting strip requirement. So it's showing that a minimum of a 3 foot wide or a 1 meter wide planting strip across that lot line adjacent to the self-storage facility is required. Just to make sure that public comment and consideration's been given, it's been built into this. Thanks.
Anything further? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 8, section 8 is staff reports. Item A, Manager of Development Services Sands. This is regarding the Flame Ontario Arts Collective Land Use Agreement. This was formerly known as Hyperborea down on Doyle Road. I need a mover that council receive this report and the council approve and enter into the land use agreement with the Flame Ontario Arts Collective for the purpose of execution of the special events permit for Sideburn 2023. Sherry and Wendy. Thank you. Jason.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, fairly recently at around council's table, there was representatives from Flame Ontario Arts Collective in February providing a deputation what their proposal is for this with respect to the special events permitting at 83 Doyle Road. With that, their direction was largely in principle approval and to come out of that with entering into a land use agreement. Township staff, our legal counsel, as well as Flame Ontario's legal counsel have drafted and successfully agreed upon the conditions included within this land use control or land use agreement that you have before you this evening, as well as the financial term, the temporal time frame associated, as well as any works to be completed to ensure that this project or this event, occurs in accordance with what our emergency services department deems appropriate. I do want to take this time to note that just last weekend, representatives from Flame Ontario Arts Collective were on site and they were completing noise studies in the area. They were attending the neighbors who live in the vicinity and completing that noise study with decibel readers on site. And we have received one comment, which I've included on the agenda for your consideration this evening, respecting the time of day in which this noise ought to be limited. And you'll see within the actual report, in the actual agreement, we've included that 1 a.m. sort of cutoff period for the amplified sound directed towards any neighboring home. So that's been successfully addressed and acknowledged by both staff as well as event organizers and agreed upon in the agreement. Aside from that, there's been no comments received from the members of the community. Happy to answer any question.
Any questions or comments? Wenda.
Yes, I hope I'm looking at the right edition. So item number 20 of the agreement, it says, talk about the very last statement. It says the licensee shall provide ticket holders with a wristband that shall permit the wearer to leave and re-enter the event space. I know the last 3 years that they had it, when you came in, you weren't allowed to leave. Well, I shouldn't say you weren't allowed to leave. You could leave, but you weren't allowed to re-enter once you'd left. So it sounds like they've changed that, have they?
Through your worship, I can't speak to the lease agreement, if you will, previously. I wasn't here for that and I didn't author it. However, essentially, yeah, this is the proposal is to allow for attendees of the event to leave the premise, and there be strict security that's by the event organizer to ensure that readmission is truly via event attendees.
Anything further? Doug.
Yeah, I wonder, Jason, if we should maybe go back and revisit that comment with these people, because the previous statement was not really to let people in who weren't intended, but not to let people out who may not be in a condition to be out. Okay, so it was for safety concerns that people were retained to the property. So maybe we should question why that was changed, because it was there prior that if you left, you left, you didn't come back in the prior agreement.
Through your worship, Public Works Manager Thompson, maybe he was familiar with the previous agreement. He may be able to provide some better insight than I.
I can speak briefly on it. Their intent is still to be, once you enter, you're not to leave. This is a new agreement, first agreement for us. They had an agreement with the current landowner at the time. So it would have been covered under our special event items of entering and not entering. So the wording is in this agreement.
Yeah. That they're not to leave.
No.
Yeah, they can't come back in.
They can't come back.
Yeah,
Their intent is
Thank
to,
you.
yeah.
Yep.
Anything further? We have a motion on the floor. Oh, one more thing then. Go ahead, Wendy.
Yes, one more quick thing. So in Mr. Clapp's email, he does talk about the very last comment he makes is that also the last two functions, the organizers failed to comply with the guidelines set down as stated in their permit. And he's asking if they fail to comply, then their application for future permits should be denied. I don't think that's anything we can write into the agreement, but that certainly may be something we can have a good discussion with them about.
Certainly. That would be in the debriefing after the event. Yeah, if there's been some egregious violation of the terms.
Or maybe even before, so that they know before it even starts that if they can't meet the specifications of the agreement, that they won't be allowed to do it next year.
If you want to make that a motion, that's certainly up. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councilor Lalonde's point, the only one point I'd like to add is this lease agreement is for 1 year, for one event. This is not there's no aspect of it that speaks to it being in perpetuity, and the special event permit that you'll see on the agenda in some motion to come is a single year permit for 2023 only. And we have all legal rights and abilities to reconsider the striking of a specific condition, if you will, post-event and moving into years to come. So that's absolutely something that we're able to do, in that they return to this council seeking clarification and ability to run a subsequent event.
Okay, anything further? Rob?
Through you, John, I think to Wendy's point, she's looking for a deterrent. There's to avoid problems, not necessarily to deal with them after the fact. So just maybe whoever's got the closest connection with them, just mention to them that we're watching. That's all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Public Works Manager Thompson, with the hat of fire chief, is on site, more so than I think many of you would suspect as this event leads up. And I don't say that as an attendee. I say that because for example, the specific locations of burn pits, those are ever changing, right? These were assessments that were completed when there was snow on the ground and when vegetation looked maybe different. So the reality of that in May of 2023 might be somewhat different than what you have tweaked. So ensuring that it's compliant with what Chief Thompson wants to see, there's most definitely ability for staff to be in communication with these event organizers.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I just thought I had read something about this already in here, and I just found it under termination number 3. That if the licensee fails to comply with the terms of the agreement, the township may terminate the agreement, withdraw the event permit, and refuse to license similar events by the licensee within the township in the future. So isn't that the same thing?
It's already in here. Yeah. Anything further? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item number 2 in this section, provincial policy statement proposed amendments. I need a motion that council receive the report entitled Provincial Policy Statement Proposed Amendments for Information Purposes. Wenda and Crystal Lee. Jason.
Thank you, Your Worship. The province continues to make legislative changes, period. The provincial policy statement may change in 2023, as we see. Typically, it's a 4 to 5 year cycle where we have PPS, provincial policy statements, in effect. It was most recently updated in 2020, and we are 2.5, 3 years into that, and they're looking at changing to make what I would consider more aligned policies with the vision of more homes faster and what we've seen from other policies that have been changed at the provincial level. Subsequent to the PPS change, there is Bill 97, Helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act, that's running in tandem with regard to the potential provincial modification to legislation. And I'm providing this as an update for council as it relates to commenting periods, because they differ. However, they remain open at this time. June 5th and May 6th are the two terminations of those commenting periods. Just very quickly, I've reviewed the PPS, draft PPS fairly quickly. However, there are somewhat limited changes to what I would call Stone Mills Township context, given our rural aspect. The two changes that I would say of note are ability to expand a rural settlement area outside of a municipal comprehensive official plan update. So that's a relatively major change. Whether it'll happen very often in what we would see, I don't know, but it used to be very restrictive with respect to population projection growth and justifying your ability to, or inability, if you will, to accommodate that population growth in neighboring hamlets as opposed to one single. So it might, for example, lead to abilities to expand Camden East, where even though we have land availability in Tamworth, for example. So that's one major change that I see. And second to that, there is supposed to be changes with respect to rural servicing aspects and the current hierarchy of full municipal service, communal service, and then private individual service. What that hierarchy shift looks like, I'm not aware. I suspect it's going to be fairly substantial or fairly similar to what we have in effect today from a hierarchy point of view. However, there's to be changes with regard to that servicing component. So for those of you who are interested, these are online and the ERO is accepting comments. So happy just providing that for information.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 3 is the Battery Energy Storage System Commenting Ability Information Report. I need a motion that council receives this report. From Doug, Sherry, any questions or comments? Jason, do you want to summarize this piece of info?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. This is another item for information for council and information for those of you who are still here in the chambers. There's ability to provide comment, as we all know, to Blue Earth. However, some of us or members of the community may not have known there's an ability to provide comment directly to IESO, and there's a link provided within this report regarding BESS and storage facilities moving forward. We've talked about this, so I'm not going to go into detail. However, there's a bulletin that was just provided to municipal staff today. Chris, you can pull it up as the next image link. May 16th, it's been confirmed at the Stone Mills Recreation Center. Blue Earth will be providing what they're calling a public open house at the rink surface. So more of like a information session that's, I believe, poster board and info related to answer questions that members of the community may have. It's unrelated to the township. We're hosting, we're providing a venue, but it's not a municipal led meeting. It won't be this format. Second to that, I also just wanted to provide an update. I know it's been some time that's passed since our last meeting, but comments that were received by myself and weren't provided to Blue Earth directly have been provided, some summarized, consolidated, and provided. So they have all of the commentary that was circulated to myself. I think most went to Blue Earth, but it was provided. So that's just really the information update I wanted to ensure council and members of the community were aware of as it relates to storage facilities.
Yes, Wenda.
As part of the presentation, Blue Earth provided a link to their website in discussion with this particular project. And there were a number of questions that were asked by various people. I guess this is what you're referring to, Jason, where you could submit your questions. So I went through them all, and I wasn't, I wish they were here tonight. I kind of thought they were going to be, so I'm sorry that they're not, because I have some questions to ask them. Can I review them now, or should I just forward it to them?
You can do whatever you like.
Okay. I'll try and be
This
fast.
is a council meeting.
All right, I'll try and be fast. So the very
I mean,
first,
within reason.
the question number 1, 2, this is a community question. It's general. What kind of energy storage technology is being proposed? When they came here, they said they were going to be using lithium iron phosphate. And I had done some research on that and found out that it's fairly new, but it's much more stable, and it's much less toxic than the lithium ion phosphate, which was used, for example, in Arizona, where they had that big fire. So I felt comfortable in the fact that they were planning to use a newer technology that is less toxic, more stable. However, their answer to this question says that they may be using this type of technology. I wasn't crazy about the use of the word may, and I wanted to talk to them about that. 1.4 is how new is the technology, and then they listed a whole bunch of different companies and countries and how big their facilities were and how many units and all that kind of thing. And this one by far is huge, and the only one that was comparable was discussed with Michael, and that was the one in China that does use an LFP, the lithium iron phosphate, but the temperatures, as you addressed, are very different from what we deal with. So being that it's a new technology, I have concerns about that. 2.3, what measures do you propose to mitigate stormwater discharge and impacts to water sources? So their answer was Blue Earth will likely be seeking an environmental compliance approval from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks for potential impact to stormwater management system. They'll likely do that. I wish they'd were here, because I'd like to ask them why they chose to use the word likely as opposed to the simple word, we will be seeking the environmental compliance approval. 2.9, am I going fast enough? Is there a risk of explosion with this technology? And if so, can you explain the conditions and safeguards? So this technology, they say, is equipped to report the alarm and mitigate explosion risks. I wanted to ask them how they would mitigate explosion risks, because we've heard Michael say they put water on it. So is that how they're planning to mitigate an explosion? I'd certainly like to hear better science on that. The next one was a phrase pertaining to stray voltage. And they said, quote, if complaints are made after project construction, a stray voltage inspection could be completed. Will be completed, must be completed, shall be completed, but could be completed? I don't know. I'm just seeing a lot of really soft language in their responses to what I think are pretty important questions. Next one quickly I'm just wondering, would it not make more sense to install in an industrial area? I'd love to know what Michael's 2 other options for locations were, as opposed to rural. And the final one was the fact that they're putting up 400 containers. I must have been daydreaming when they were here. I never heard them say 400 containers. And that sounds like an awful lot to be putting on the 25 acres of land. I think it would be A, an eyesore, and B, it would affect, as you brought up the last time, the possibility of property values. Anyway, I think I went through it. very quickly here. The other thing is the IESO is talking about expediting the timeline. So that might be something that Jason wants to look at to see if our project fits into that expedited timeline for this.
Thank you, Wenda.
Okay.
Just a comment, it's not our project.
No,
there is
thank you for
not
that
even an
correction.
application.
Because on the opening of their page, they talk about it like,
Well, that's their language, but it's not
Yeah.
our project.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just something we've heard about, basically. Crystal Lee.
I just wanted to say, like, I came up in discussion about how the lack of regulations, and I feel like all these, we could really demonstrate how there isn't really regulations around creating these kinds of facilities.
That's exactly right. And that's the problem basically for the township at this time. A request for proposals was issued. And then we're blindsided by residents coming to us and saying, there's a company that wants to put a whole pile of batteries near where we live. And we haven't been notified by the company. We haven't been provided with guidelines from any relevant ministry. We're flying by the seat of our pants. Anyone else? Doug.
Yeah, this information showed up late today. I find that typical of working with Blue Earth from a past experience. I'm not saying it was deliberately timed, but so I sit down late this afternoon reading through this, and fortunately I decided I should read every line, because if I hadn't, I would have never found the questions. There's 3 highlighted little marks in here, and if you don't highlight, don't touch on them and bring them up, the community questions and all the other questions would have never showed up. They were hidden behind that. You know, I continue to have this feeling that we have to be very observant. But if you go in and look, the 3rd highlighted blue line will get you to your questions. Okay, the first 2 will get you to an invalid response. Okay.
Anyone else? Did I get a mover and seconder, Jason? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So some of those questions and concerns, Wenda, can certainly be addressed to them at the May 16th meeting. That is an opportunity to get some comment from them. So we've got to pay some bills here. Manager of Finance, Beauchamp, Township of Stone Mills accounts. Good night.
Thank you very much. All the best. Well, Michael, well done. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Christina.
What you have in front of you tonight is the March invoices that we have paid, and I don't have any errors of note at the moment.
I should have got a mover and seconder. Sherry and Doug, any questions for Christina? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Christina. Okay, Manager of Public Works and Emergency Services Thompson. This is the Flame Ontario Special Event Permit. I need a motion that we receive the report and approve the special event permit documents as provided by Flame Ontario Arts Collective. Sherry and Wendy. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Revise. Our special event permit, anyone over 250 that's hosting the event has to get a special event through our bylaw. Their attendance is for 800 tickets to be sold. So we reviewed all their special event items and feel it's adequate. They still have a few internal things to get back to us, like size of location of the fires and items like that. But that'll be kind of last minute, the week of the event.
Questions or comments? I guess if it doesn't stop raining, fire isn't going to be a big issue. All in favor?
Exactly.
That's carried. Thanks, Jeff. And you've got an item on granular crushing tender. I need a motion that we receive that report and then we approve the recommendation for staff to enter into an agreement with Micon Aggregates for granular crushing for a total amount of $686,520 exclusive of HST. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Wenda and Doug. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you again. Again, nothing really to add to this report. There was only one bidder, unfortunately, but that's the way it works.
Why is that? You're all busy?
We typically only have maybe 3 for this area that would bid it. Toronto, Peterborough, Ottawa. Yeah, we only had 1. So yeah, that could be. But the dollar values fit in line with market values. So I'm comfortable awarding it to Mike on.
Okay, all in favor of that? That's carried, thanks. And Jeff, you're on again. I need a mover. The council received the report entitled Part-Time Landfill Attendant, and that council approved the recommendation for staff to proceed with the hiring of Douglas Patterson for that position. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Crystal Lee and Sherry. Any further comment, Jeff?
No comments.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. And Jeff, you're on again. I need a mover that council receive the report entitled 2022 Annual Landfill Monitoring. This is further to the pension delegation that we had. Anything to add, Jeff?
Just that's the full report, and it had to be submitted to the ministry for approval on May 30th.
Okay. Did I get a mover or was it going too fast? I didn't. Rob and Sherry. Rob, I delegated you a mover. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And item 5, Jeff again, A1 Corner Store Encroachment Agreement. This is for a patio. I need a mover that we receive the report and the council approve the recommendation for staff to proceed with the encroachment agreement. Wenda and Sherry. Go ahead, Jeff.
Requests came into Mr. Sands through A1 Corner. Typically, it's in the report if people went through it. Through COVID, they were granted an encroachment agreement, and we actually installed the barriers for them. Last year was actually the first time outside of COVID that they requested. So again, we're back again for a request to put an outdoor patio at the corner of Bridge Street East and whatever the other one is, Ottawa, maybe.
You don't know all the names. of
Everyone
streets
knows.
in
Everyone
Tamworth?
knows the location, I believe.
I was driving through Tamworth today and I saw a sign that said Bond Street and I thought, I don't ever remember Bond Street. Any discussion on this? Yes, Doug and then Wendy.
Well, just a question. We did this during COVID as a way to help businesses stay open. Okay. COVID's over now, and I am just wondering if we shouldn't maybe have a policy on this. We're just flying blind on it, okay? But for example, I mean, we have a policy on chip trucks. If chip trucks are located in our township, they must comply with certain rules and actually get a permit and whatever to do things. And I'm wondering if we should maybe check with our neighbors, see what they do on the case of patios. And I guess that should also include whether or not whether there's a charge for, I don't think we should be actually installing the patios for people free of charge, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a business expense, and if you do it for one, how many other businesses are we going to? So I believe we should see what our neighbors do, maybe look at a.
I agree with Doug. Also, I know the corner store does have a patio out off her kitchen, and it would be perfectly fine. It could seat as many people as she's sitting on the side. She probably would have to have the food people inspect, make sure it's it's okay to go that exit. But I would think that would be better for her as well, because she would get shade all afternoon, where now she gets sun all afternoon. And I think it would look better and be more inviting. But I'm sure she has thought of that, but I don't know if it was ever discussed. But that would be my recommendation to talk to her about.
Anything further? Yes, Rob.
Through you, John. Jeff, how much time and effort is it to put these barriers in from past experience?
Typically, we can erect them in 2 hours or less and take them down in 2 hours or less. We own the concrete barriers, and we actually had them prior to COVID, so it's not like we had to go and purchase them. But it's equipment time and floating and getting them in place.
Where do they reside when they're not being used? Are they just in the Tamworth dump of the building?
They are now. The first year we had to ship them from here, but
Anything further? We have a motion. All in favor? That's carried. Did anyone want to further move some sort of policy? That would seem like a good idea.
I would move that we look at development of policy, and I'm only doing that simply because what happens request, where do we get the barriers and all the days it takes to set them up? You know, so we should look at what others, you know, Royal Oarsman and Napanee, for example, does it. There's different places that do it. Just let's see how they view this issue. Okay, thank you. I'll move it
Okay.
that we look at developing a policy.
Okay. I'll just get a seconder, Jason. Did you want to second that, Wendy? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
through you, Reeve Wise, primarily directed to Deputy Reeve Davison. I've written further that council direct management to research and present a potential patio licensing bylaw, i.e. encroachment policy, and return to council for consideration.
And
Is that captured?
cover any costs that, you know, look at the bylaw for that. Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion? Carried. Thanks. It was Doug and Wendy. Yeah. Yeah. And onward. Summer employment positions. Jeff, is this still you? Holy dynamite. I need a
busy
motion.
this week.
I need a motion. The council authorizes the hiring of Caden Richmond, Jessica Bunner or Brunner? Bruner. Yeah, I thought so. Anna Baker and Isaac Hewins for the summer parks and rec, public works, maintenance, labor, student positions, and further that the terms of employment be in accordance with Stone Mills Human Resource Policy, the Canada Summer Job Grants and Employment Standards Act. Can I get them over? That's Doug and Sherry. Go ahead. Anything to add to the report, Jeff?
Thank you, Reeve Wise. Yeah, nothing to add other than I have good staff.
Yay.
To get all these reports out.
Yeah, it's great. Any? Go ahead, all in favor then. Thank
No,
you.
I had a-
Oh, sorry, Wenda. I thought you were just prematurely voting. Go ahead, Wenda. Wenda.
I'd say that I know two of these young kids and they're really good workers. You're going to have a good crew.
Okay, and finally, Jeff. Oh, sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
To Wenda's point, I don't know any of these children, but my son held one of these positions a few years ago, and it was a really great learning experience for him. He came home dusty, dirty, sweaty, smarter, stronger, and better for it. So I'm glad to see these young people are going to get the same opportunity. So congratulations to the four of them.
Thank you. And the last item for Jeff is the Beaver Lake Farmer and Artisan Market traffic flow. That was the one big issue with this place. I move that council receive the report and that council approve staff to supply temporary barriers to market organizers. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Sherry and Wendy, any discussion? Wenda.
Do we have an idea of when we might hear back from that Inclusive Communities grant, the 60,000?
Who wants to handle that? Oh, go ahead,
So-
Christina.
So the grant is to start come August, which they have also said that, so you're supposed to be allowed to expense starting in August, but they haven't actually said when they're going to announce. It does say something along the lines of announcements will be around the same time as the start date, but it doesn't give a specific date.
Sorry, Jeff, I kind of stepped on you there. Anything to add to what you're proposing here?
Through you, nothing to add. I met with Mark Yeomans and he thought it was a great plan. If anyone had a chance to look at the mapping, we're going to probably extend that a little bit to the eastward yet, and still allow traffic to flow through to the lake. But that was usually the issue right where that pinch point is.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure we capture that in barriers. So
Yeah, it should make it more obvious what people are supposed to do when they drive in there.
obvious, and they're willing to put it up and down.
Yeah. Yeah.
During the market.
And where will all that be stored?
I'm hoping in the train station,
Right.
if we can have room and they have access to that.
Yeah, good. Anything further on this item? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Jeff. Item D in this section is for Chief Building Official Detler. This is regarding the Yarker Ball Field vandalism update. Need a motion that council receive his report on vandalism and that council direct staff to undertake purchases as discussed in the report to improve security at the ball field. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Sherry and Rob. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, another unfortunate event at the Yarker Ball Field.
Yeah.
Seems to be a spot where it's kind of tucked away and there isn't a lot of supervision, and it seems to be a hot spot of things that have happened over the years. And this is something I've been thinking about for quite a while. Actually had a security company out to properties this year and got some quotes a little higher than maybe I'd hoped. So this is kind of a plan B, kind of cheaper, just kind of off the shelf trail cams that can go to sell, take videos, and do lots of things, and preferably solar panels, preferably something that's hard to steal, because that's we've had in the past trail cams that we put out at actually landfill sites that have gone missing, just because they're easy to steal. Hopefully this is something that would, in conjunction with signs and maybe added lights, would bring some security to that site. For the most part, recently, other sites haven't had that much vandalism. I know a few years ago we dealt with at the Tamworth Playground, which is near the outfield at the Tamworth Ball Diamond, a series of repeated vandals affecting that property. For the most part, it's been actually not that bad, but $3,400 on a pretty new bleacher is an unfortunate thing. It kind of looked like Recreation Coordinator Al Fenwick seemed to think that this probably happened over the winter when the bottom plank there and the rest of that situation with that bleacher was probably frozen, and that's why they didn't go at that bottom, because there was snow and ice, and that's kind of the rest of the planks and aluminum were easy pickings. Just wondering what council's thoughts on my proposal are.
Questions, comments? Doug?
Yeah, I've observed this over the years, a number of cases, and Jake nailed it right at the start. This ball field has no neighbors that observe it. And in fact, it's back in off the road and dark. But I will disagree with Jake. This isn't vandalism, this is theft. That's all it is. Somebody took the aluminum plank simply because extruded aluminum is valuable over the money. So somebody's made a few $100s at our expense here. I don't know if trail cameras, I'm willing to try it, but I got a feeling they might go the same way, to be quite honest with you. I think the probable answer here is remove the bleachers every fall. And I know we used to have to do that with the docks and Barty Lake Park and that to keep them safe. And, for three sets of bleachers here, maybe we have to do that here too. Because they're simply just, to be quite honest with you, they're probably a quarter of a kilometer off the road where they're located, in behind fences and a couple things like that. You could sit back there at a dark moonlit night and nobody'd ever know you were there, to be quite honest with you. So I don't think it's just safe there, to be quite honest with you. You can try a camera if you can think you can find a safe, secure enough spot. But over the years, there's been different things. I know I went right after we built the ball field or reconditioned it years ago. I caught a young lad with a dirt bike tearing the infield up, and I know that happens in all the parks. And somebody a few years ago shot out a couple of lights or whatever. So there just seems to be a certain element every few years that it's too bad somebody wasn't behind them at the right time with a good steel boot. But anyways,
Anyone else? Rob?
The one I do like about the trail cameras is it's instantaneous. We can have them right away. I also like the fact that they are portable. The bear boxes that you mentioned, I've seen them and worked with them. They're extremely durable. And if they're put at a higher at a higher a height. By the time someone does go to steal them, they are on your phone. And if we use them accordingly, we'll not only know who did the damage, we'll also know who has the camera. I like the idea myself. I also like the fact that if we're going to do signage, we could do signage at all of our public areas. And then the cameras could be moved from place to place from time to time, which would be very convenient because the people, well, the poorly behaved people in the township would have no idea where they may be at any given time. I know Yorker's a hotspot, but Enterprise, Moscow could also benefit from that. So Tamworth, like you mentioned, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to extend the signage to all the locations, make everybody aware, and then from time to time pop those cameras around. I think it's a fantastic idea myself.
Yes, Wendy.
Just wondering if the trail cams have some kind of motion light detector, because you can get those motion light things that are very reasonable, and they look like they have a camera because they have a flashing red light on them. I have one at my house, and everybody says, "Is that a camera?" I say, "Yep."
Wendy, you just revealed that at a public meeting that's being broadcast. Maybe you better put a camera in. Yes, Doug.
Just one more question, Jake. Has this been reported to the police as theft? If it hasn't, I think it should be. They do have the ear to the ground, and they do talk to people who take scrap metal, and you'd be surprised they may have some awareness of something like this. This is a unique object. I would report it to them.
Through your worship, I haven't actually reported it yet, but I will.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, one other point. They did leave the bottom too, in the off chance that they scrap, because if they were taken in the winter, scrap prices were at a bare minimum, and they wouldn't weigh up for much, but they would make a fantastic, I don't know, bottom for a trailer or whatever. I'm thinking in my world of building and fabricating, it wouldn't be a bad idea to publish that photo on our social media site if we haven't already done so, and keep an eye out for those planks, because if they've used them for some sort of purpose, they're on display as we speak somewhere.
Anyone else? Sorry. Did I get a mover and seconder? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Jake. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Yes, I think, Rob just touched on something, Jake, for all the time it takes. Could you put that picture on Erica is awesome with a little bit of a comment? If it was local, it'd be nice to share that picture around the village.
Good idea. Okay. Items for information. Jason? No. Yeah, good. Okay, I just need a motion to receive the Quinte Conservation Source Protection Authority meeting minutes from November 24th. Can I get a mover? Sherry, Rob, all in favor? And also the same minutes, just for the board minutes from February 16th. Wendy and Wenda, all in favor? Was there any discussion based on those? None noted. New business and statements from members. Anyone have new business? No one? Yes, go ahead, Jason.
Through you, your worship, the update I have in live time approximately 2 hours ago was that 35 members were in attendance at our first session of pickleball at the Stone Mills Recreation Center. So, and that just to provide that, today was our first day. I know some members of our audience this evening were interested in congratulatory to the township as a whole as to getting that program and off the ground. And I just wanted to mention that this evening, that there was a decent turnout with respect to attendance. So
I played with 8 other people at our regular Tamworth afternoon pickleball session, and they were shocked and disappointed that I would not be making a little presentation tonight at Tamworth, but I said I would probably have to chair the council meeting. I need a confirming by. Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
Is it possible to do a little story in the paper and just let them come out, take some pictures, and say, I know if you ask them to come out, they would come out and take some pictures, probably through the day. There's a Wednesday.
probably enjoy that. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Could I request that?
Yeah.
Wonderful. And I did hear too, the people couldn't say enough good things about this and getting things going at pickleball. And so you guys did a great job getting lots of comments, wonderful comments. Thanks.
Yeah, people are pretty pleased. Anything further? Statements from members? Doug?
Statement, I'm very glad that I see earlier in this evening that some people sitting at the end of the table got up and shook hands. I'd just like to make comment on that situation that didn't end up as it started out.
Well, that's good. I didn't see that. I was concentrating on the next item on the agenda, but it's unfortunate that that situation in Napanee has sort of spilled over here. I mean, my only thought is whatever can be worked out that as you said, Doug, accommodates everyone's concerns and needs is the best approach. And why is it always communication that's the problem?
The part that shocked me.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some very passionate conversation statements made, but I do know that there was members from the Cat Trail Management Board that went to Napanee Council. I mentioned one 5, 6, 8 years ago. In fact, I also know that Napanee Council did put some money aside a few years ago, and it just seems like, why was this a surprise to everybody?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's too bad.
But people need to understand everybody has to talk and get along and listen to each other's concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty basic.
Yep.
If you think about it, though, that's the world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's people don't speak like they used to,
No,
and
they yell.
it's even bleeding into the older generations now. You have a discussion, you don't say anything, you disappear, and you go on social.
Yeah.
Make a mess out of things.
Yeah.
Instead of the old-fashioned way where you can resolve and look each other in the face and have body language and communicate and get something accomplished. And we saw that tonight. By the way, Doug, good job. That was fantastic what you did.
Yeah. I need a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw. Sherry and Doug, all in favor. That's carried. And I need motion to adjourn. Chris, Andy, all in favor. Carried. Thank you.
Every night, every time it's Crystal and Linda want to get out of here. In the old days when we set up on the stage, Dorothy would set out all